lovely morbid friends. How are you today? So today we are going to be talking about another serial killer. If this is your first time here, hello and welcome. My name is Liz. I am your lovely host here on Creating Crime Time. Now, Creating Crime Time, you're wondering what that may be. Well, on this channel, I'm going to be talking about a true crime story, and I'm going to be creating a work of art at the same time. So, if you are interested, please get yourself comfy, grab a beverage, sit down, relax, and enjoy this lovely little tale. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on your notification bell to all, and let's get into today's lovely tale of a serial killer. But first, I would like to mention any warnings. So, this case in particular is deals with sadism. If you can't stomach a lot of grotesque items, then just kind of skip over the parts that I go over. This also includes murder of younger people, preteens. So also, if you don't like crime involving children, this one might not be for you, but anywho. Today we're going to be talking about John Joubert, Mr. Lovely John Joubert. He's got a fancy name. John Joseph Joubert the Fourth. Now, this man I wanted to cover, I think mainly is because I wanted to cover crimes in New England first. And this one kind of branches out from New England because his crimes span in Maine and in Nebraska. So, who is John Joseph Joubert? You may wonder. Well, he was born on the 2nd of July in 1963, and from a very young age, he had a troubled life. His parents divorced when he was 6, and he lived with his mother in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Well, he was forbidden to ever see his father, which kind of helped mold his hatred towards his mother. Because she was very controlling over him, and that probably helped to mold the whole control factor for him, for like future him, for when he was younger. And in 1974, she moved them to Portland, Maine. Now, before they're moving to Maine, in 1971, his mother moved them out of their former house and into a rundown apartment. And at this time, he was considered an outcast in school, and he really longed for kind of like social gratification. He wanted people to feel better about his isolation, and wanted to feel better about going from a once happy life into that of just not having everything that he wanted as a younger kid. And to solve that, he joined the Cub Scouts. And it was around this time that he started his sadistic and homicidal fantasies. Why does everything start with a Scouts program? Or anything involving activities with other kids? But, anywho. This is when his thoughts progressed to the point where he contemplated murdering strangers on the streets. And though in those thoughts, he thought about tying them up and gagging them. And this would be mainly towards people that resisted him. which, if you think about it, he was resisting his mom and she was controlling. Now he's the one in control. He can't stand people that resist him. So in a later psychiatric report that was made about him, he described saying that the pleasure that's derived from the thought of his victims is so like overpowering for him. And he would often think, if you're gonna do it, get it over with type thing. Like, that anticipation was so much for him. And he longed to have just one touch, but one touch isn't enough when you like hurting people. So, moving into his lovely little teenage years, when he was 13, he actually stabbed a young girl with a pencil, and he got a little aroused when he stabbed her, especially when she cried out in pain. And then the following day, he took a razor blade and slashed another girl's bike tires as he biked past her. He was never caught for either attack. And in another incident, he beat and nearly strangled another boy that was near him. So he had a lot of issues, and his rage against others was very prominent. It was also known that he loved being the bully. He loved picking on other people, which again is another control thing that he's learned from his mother. And with the bullying, he started to stab and slash other people. He did end up completing school. He attended Cheverus High School in Portland, and he graduated in 1981. Well, let's get into the not so fun things, shall we? Now again, if you don't like crimes against kids, I mean, you can listen if you want, but I mean, it's not like I'm going to show you anything. Alright, so on August 22nd, 1982, an 11-year-old boy named Ricky Stetson had gone jogging on a 3.5-mile long Back Cove trail in Portland. When he didn't return, his parents called the police, and the next day, motorists discovered his body on the side of US I-295. So it appeared that somebody tried to undress him, then stabbed him and strangled him. A suspect was arrested for his murder, but his teeth did not match a bite mark that was present on his body. So that person was released after a 1.5 years in custody. And then no leads showed up until January 1984. So that is victim number 1. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my tripod. Alright. So, our next victim in this case is Danny Jo Eberly. He was a 13-year-old boy. He unfortunately disappeared while he was delivering newspapers on Sunday, September 18th, 1983 in Bellevue, Nebraska. His brother, who also delivered papers, didn't see him, but he did remember being followed by a white man in a tan car on a previous day. So he knew somebody was watching him, but didn't know if he was watching his brother. And it was found that Danny had only delivered 3 of the 70 newspapers he was supposed to deliver on his route. And at the address of the 4th house, this is where his bicycle was discovered, and along with the rest of the newspapers for the route. There was no sign of a struggle, and Joubert, when he was in custody, would later describe how he approached Danny drew a knife and then covered his mouth with his hand and instructed Eberly to follow him into his truck and drove down a gravel road outside of town. Now, with Ricky, he was found the next day. With Danny, he was found 3 days later. Alright, so after a 3-day search, Danny's body was discovered in a patch of gravel and grass 4 miles away from his bike. So, I mean, he was far, but not relatively too far. He had been stripped to his underwear. His feet and his hands were bound. His mouth had been taped with surgical tape, so that obviously he was muffled. Knife wounds were across his body, which showed signs that he was tortured before he died. And in addition, Joubert had stabbed him 9 times. So, at first this was classified as a kidnapping case, and with kidnapping, that falls under the jurisdiction of the federal government of the U.S., so the FBI was called in for this case. And then, after they investigated a few leads, including a young man who was arrested for molesting 2 other young boys in the area about a week after the crime, he failed a polygraph and had a false alibi, but he didn't fit the profile. He didn't fit the profile that the FBI created. So he was released because there was no evidence, and other known pedophiles in the area were questioned, but the case was cold due to a lack of evidence. Don't you just love how that happens? So, on December 2nd, 1983, so these ones were much closer together. We went from September now to December, so just a few months, whereas in retrospect, the first murder happened a year and a month prior to the second one. So just a smaller window of time has passed. So generally with serial killers, what will happen is they'll get a first taste and their taste will be satiated for a while, and then that hunger comes back and they'll strike. But it's not enough, so then that's why they continue to strike. I don't mean to come off really strange. I read a lot. I watch a lot of crime things. Trust me, I mean, I'm morbid, but I'm not a serial killer. You don't have anything to worry about. So, just a few months later, December 2nd, 1983, we have Christopher Walden, who is 12. Now, he disappeared from Papillon, Nebraska, and he disappeared from an area that was about 3 miles away from Danny's body, like where his body was found. And witnesses said they saw a white man in a tan car. And when they interviewed Joubert, Joubert said that he had driven up to Walden and then asked him, as he walked, he showed him the sheath of his knife and ordered him into the car. So that's how he got him into his vehicle. So he also stated that after they drove some railway lines out of town, he ordered Walden to strip down to his underwear, which he did. But Walden refused to lie down. So after a struggle, Joubert overpowered him and then stabbed him. Joubert cut Walden's throat so deeply that he was almost decapitated. Walden's body was found 2 days later and about 5 miles from town. And although the crimes were similar, there were differences that were present. Walden wasn't bound. He was actually concealed more and was thought to have been killed immediately after being abducted. So I think my personal opinion is with Walden's death, Joubert got really irritated with him because he wouldn't lay down. So he thought quick, well, if he's not going to lay down, he's not going to listen to me. I need to get rid of him. So that's what I think happened. And I mean, our own opinions are our own opinions. But yeah, ultimately that's what I think. And with the other two, it was easier for him to overpower them. So that's why it was a little bit more different than Walden's case. So now his first crime was in 1982, and then 1983 were the second ones. Well, in January of 1984, there was a preschool teacher in the area of the murders, and she called police because she saw a young man driving in the area. And there was a lot of conflicting stories about what actually happened, whether the car was loitering, just driving around. And then the driver saw the teacher write down his license plate number. He stopped and threatened her before he fled the scene. Now, the car wasn't tan, but it was traced and found to be rented by John Joubert, an enlisted radar tech from Offutt. I'm going to say that name wrong. Offutt Air Base. So he was on the air base, and it turned out to be his own car. A tan Chevy Nova sedan, which is the tan car that people were seeing. And that was at base, but it was being repaired. So this is why Joubert had the rental car. So after they figured out similarities with the car with Joubert, they issued a search warrant, and now what they ended up finding was rope that was consistent to the rope that was used to bind Danny. And this was found in Joubert's dorm room. Now, with him being on the Air Force Base, obviously, he's got to keep things in his room. Well, that was one of the wrong things to keep in your room, Mr. Joubert. So, the FBI found more of this unusual rope that had been made for the U.S. military in South Korea. And under interrogation, Joubert admitted to getting it from the scoutmaster in the troop in which he was an assistant. Fun times, fun times. So, now, the head profiler for the FBI, Robert Rossler, at the time, he had access to information about the two boys in Nebraska. And he worked up a description, like matching Joubert in every way. And while presenting the case of the two boys in Nebraska to a training class at the FBI Academy in Quantico, a police officer from Portland, Maine noted similarities in the case in his jurisdiction, which took place while Joubert lived there. And Joubert kind of came up again and again. And then a bite mark comparison was made between the case in Maine and a case in Nebraska, which proved Joubert was responsible for the Maine killing. And that also linked him to Nebraska. More so to Nebraska now. I mean, we already got his car. Now we have a bite mark that is very similar. So, Ressler and the Maine investigators came to believe that Joubert joined the military to get away from Maine. And after he murdered Stetson in Maine. That's why they believe he joined the military. And then further investigation revealed that with the pencil stabbing of the girl when he was younger in 1979 and the murder of Stetson in 1982. And in 1980, Ressler revealed that Joubert had slashed a 9-year-old boy and a female teacher in her mid-20s who both had been cut rather badly and were lucky to be alive. So they unveiled his very violent upbringing, and everything is all coming to light. So now they have him in custody. Joubert confesses to killing the 2 boys, and on January 12th, he was charged with their murders. After he initially pleaded not guilty, he changed his plea to guilty. And there was several psychiatric evaluations done on him. One of them characterized him of having OCD and sadistic tendencies, and also suffering from schizoid personality disorder. So, the huge thing about being tested by psychiatric doctors while you are awaiting your trial is to see if you're competent or not. And they found him to not be psychotic at the time of these murders, so he was competent. A panel of 3 judges sentenced him to death for both counts, so he has 2 death penalties on him. Joubert was also sentenced to life imprisonment in Maine because Maine doesn't have a death penalty. And in 1990 was when he was sentenced to life in prison for Ricky Stetson's murder. And that was after his teeth were found to be a match. Now in 1995, Joubert filed with the courts over the death sentences, and he argued that his childhood and he had different arguments about whether things were actually up to standard, whether things were actually done right, just trying every trick in the book to get his case thrown out or his death sentences overturned. Well, it didn't work out very well because Joubert was executed on July 17th of 1996, and the state death penalty in Nebraska is electric chair, so he was electrocuted to death. So he was the second person in the state of Nebraska to be executed by electric chair, and since the death penalty was reintroduced in 1973. There has been an appeal in Nebraska because the electric chair is cruel and unusual punishment, and this is mainly due to the fact that after he died, they noticed that there was a giant blister on the top of his head, a brain blister. It was 4 inches, and it was blistering on both, like it was literally coming straight out. Now, if you've ever seen what an electric chair looks like, you wear a cap, and obviously electricity is going in through your head, so things are going to blister out. So basically what had happened was his brain was literally trying to explode out of his brain, and it caused a mass blistering. So it's been appealed to Nebraska's Supreme Court that the death penalty is cruel and unusual punishment, but in this case it worked to rid the world of another serial killer. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's crimes. If you did, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, you guys.